Hi Anirudh, good evening. How are you?
Hi, good evening, Mahima. I'm good. What about you?
I'm good too. Thank you so much for asking. So, if you're ready, we can start with the interview.
Sure, definitely.
Thank you. So, Anirudh, why don't you tell us something about yourself?
Sure. So, hi, good evening. Firstly, I'm Amino Daria. I'm a third year undergraduate student at Shriram College of Commerce. I'm pursuing BCom honors there. And from the start itself, I've had a well founded academic background, which is what led me to SRCC firstly. And in SRCC, since there were a plethora of opportunities to explore, I took the ones that I didn't know of earlier. It was basically social entrepreneurship that attracted me the most toward it. So I basically led a model towards the industry of menstrual hygiene, and I led it as a director for 2 years during my college, which basically kind of increased my inclination towards entrepreneurship. One of the major reasons why I'm sitting here. Other than that, I'm also the EY scholar, the Ernst& Young Scholarship, which is basically one of the most prestigious scholarship when it comes to business plan again. And other than that, you can find me eating, giggling all the way, and kind of cracking some jokes when I most definitely shouldn't. And I'm here and I like consulting because I feel that in a consulting, the one thing that kind of helps you the most is the feeling of entrepreneurship that even from the start, every consulting firm gives you. And that feeling of entrepreneurship is something that I've kind of liked very much all the way through college and something that I would really like to pursue further. And so, yes, that's about it. Thank you.
Sounds good. Sounds great, Anirudh. I think it's great that you great understanding of what you want to do and why you want to do it. But when it comes to you as an individual, what do you think are your particular strengths and weaknesses? We can cover about two of them each, if that's okay with you.
Sure, definitely. So when I talk about strengths, as I already mentioned, the first strength of mine would be firstly entrepreneurship. So everything since from the college I have, and I've led a social entrepreneurship initiative. I feel that that basically has changed the way that I look at things. I now look at things in a very, I now consider each and every aspect of everything basically. So that 360-degree perspective that comes into picture, I guess that is something that has kind of developed my thinking skill and has helped me to solve any problem whatsoever in a structured manner. And the second one would definitely be my confidence and my optimism. So during college, of course, when you are in a very competitive world, you tend to kind of underestimate yourself. But all the way through, it is kind of your confidence, your optimism, and your belief in yourself that kind of leads you all the way through. So I guess these two would be my strengths. Talking about my weaknesses. Right, sure. So talking about my weakness, my first weakness would be I'll be very honest here. I'm not very much aware about what's basically my general knowledge is very not very much up to date. So I do like to read, although, but I am not much into general awareness. So I'm not really sure of what's happening around the world. I do have a basic knowledge of course, but not really into it. And second one would be a little of self doubt, so to say. So early on in the early years of my college, early days of my college, so to say, since again it's a very competitive world, I used to kind of self criticize myself a little bit more than I used to now. So basically, I guess that was something that kind of pulled me through at some moments. But now I'm definitely working towards it and feel that I am a much more confident person. Thank you.
Definitely, Anirudh, we can see it through the way that you've communicated. And I think before we proceed to the technical part of the interview, which I think you'll be able to aid, why don't you tell us where do you see yourself after 5 years? Because we understand that consulting will provide you an entrepreneurship experience, but do you want to start up on your own, or do you see yourself working in this industry in the long term as well?
All right. So thanks for the question again, and I've given it a thought. And so basically, what I have thought of that 5 years is not something which I think would be enough for me to kind of explore all of the consulting industry because I feel that there's a lot more to explore than you can in just 5 years, so to say. Firstly, and secondly, I feel that consulting would give me an experience that I would kind of cherish for a longer period of my life than just 5 years. So I feel that 5 years down the line, if selected, I would be working at your firm at a much higher position than I would be joining at firstly. I would be working with people and with team that I like to, where my opinions are valued and where I can kind of look forward to becoming better and better. So
Definitely, Anirudh. I can assure you that our firm does provide you with all of the characteristics that you've mentioned. But
beautiful.
because you're so interested with consulting, let's go and dive deeper into your consulting acumen.
Sure,
And let's go ahead with a case
sure.
that we have for you.
Okay.
It's a pretty interesting case. And your client is an airline operator. It's a low cost airline in Europe. And over the past 2 to 3 years, they have been burning cash. So, for this, we want you to diagnose the issue and recommend the solutions for the same.
Just a second.
Sure, take your time.
All right. So before moving on, I'd just like to kind of reiterate the question. So just to make sure that we're on the same page. So the client is basically a low-cost airline operator in Europe. Over the past 2 to 3 years, it has been burning cash, and now we have to diagnose and recommend appropriate solution.
Exactly, yes. You're on the right page.
I would just like to ask a few clarifying questions before I begin to analyze the case. That's fine.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Just a second. So I would firstly like to understand the client's business. What kind of flights does the company run?
So they operate short flights and that too across Europe.
Okay. And how many?
And
Yes. Sorry, I'm
so
really sorry to interrupt.
no. I There was some lag from my end. We also have connecting flights, and we also have direct flights available.
Got it. And how many competitors do we have, and are they facing any similar problems?
Right. We have about two competitors that at the moment, and unfortunately, none of them are facing this kind of issue at the moment.
Got it. All right. So basically, I believe that the major revenue decline has been from our end only, and it is a company-specific problem, so to say.
Right, right.
All right. Just can I just take 30 more seconds?
Sure, sure.
Thanks. All right. So how I'd like to kind of look at the situation is, I would just like to firstly go on and analyze revenue. Since we've been burning a lot of cash, that means
Sure.
that revenues have not been kind of appropriating for the last 2 to 3 years. So I
Sure.
believe that the major revenue streams would be number one, hospitality, revenue generated from tickets, and revenue generated from cargo. So I just wanted to confirm once that the revenue's gone down, and has there been any significant changes in costs as well?
Right. Your hypothesis is correct. The revenues have gone down and the costs have increased. But I would want you to focus on the revenue generated from the sales of tickets.
All right, sure. So just to reiterate, though, so the revenue has gone down as well, and the costs have increased. So it's a
Right.
hybrid of both these problems. All right,
Right.
that's very helpful. So I would want to analyze this problem by looking at the various components of revenue again. I would break them down into price per ticket, occupancy rate, the number of seats per flight, and the total number of flights, so that we get a whole formula, and then we can go on and analyze further. Do we have any other information to kind of any of these parameters?
Yes, sure. So the parameters that you've identified sounds good. The more information I can provide you on this is that the number of direct flights have gone up, and the occupancy in both the direct and indirect flights have gone down.
All right, sure. So the number of direct flights have gone up, and the occupancy rates in both direct and indirect flights have gone. Noted.
Right, right.
All right. So that means that the drop in revenue is mainly due to the drop in occupancy rate. So do we have any data that kind of do we have any data regarding the same? Also, just one more thing that I wanted to understand, that why are we burning caches? I would just like to look more on the cost sides as well, so that appropriate solutions can be recommended.
Right. Sure, go ahead and look into the cost side. What, according to you, would be the major components in the cost side?
Sure. Can I just take 20 more seconds again?
Surely.
All right. So I would like to break down costs into two different buckets here. The number one would be fixed cost, and the second one is variable cost again. The fixed cost would comprise of lease, number one, hangar cost, number two, salaries and marketing. And the variable cost would be fuel, maintenance and operations, etc. Do we know how these cost heads have changed over the last 2 3 years since we've been burning out cash?
Yes. So the hangar costs have gone up in the past 3 years.
All right. So I'm trying to understand why the costs have gone up, and whether this basically the increase in cost is for the entire industry or specifically for our company itself.
So it's just for us. The reason for that is that we have started owning airports.
Oh.
So, and the speciality of these airports is that people have to reach half an hour prior to the flight.
All right. So that helps a lot, firstly. So what I basically understood was that the costs have gone up only for us, and it is because we have started owning airports, which is and one major kind of thing with our airports is that people need to reach our airport only half an hour prior to the flight.
Yeah.
All right, and probably this might have led to large investment costs, which has ultimately led to kind of a huge burnout in cash. All right. So I would now like to understand why the occupancy rate has gone down so that we can go ahead and kind of figure it out as well.
Sure. Go ahead.
Sure. Just a couple more seconds here. All right. So now to understand why the occupancy rate has gone down, I would just like to break down the whole system into a value chain. Break down the whole components into a value chain. So those must be the procedure for booking flights, number one. Number two would be when the customers are reaching the airport. Number three would be procedure at the airport, which would incorporate of taking the boarding flights and getting the luggage checked and so on and so forth. Number four would obviously be taking the flight, and followed by taking the luggage at the destination airport. And this is how I kind of have broken down the value chain. Is there anything else that you would like me to include?
No, I think the value chain looks good. Let's focus on reaching the airport segment. And I would like to tell you here that though the airport is in the outskirts, the
Mhm.
time cost of reaching the airport is same.
All right, sure. So the airport is in the outskirts, but the time of reaching the airport is the same.
Right.
Got it. So I would now like to break down the cost into time and effort cost. Now, since the time cost is same as you just now mentioned, I assume that the effort cost has gone up. Is that a fair assumption to make?
Yeah, that's right. I have a few numbers for you. Can
Sure,
you work with them and let me know
definitely,
your suggestion? Right.
definitely.
So at earlier airports, mode of transportation was as follows.
Mhm.
Public was 30%,
All right,
own transport was 20%, and
got it.
taxis was 50%.
All right.
Now it has changed to public being 50, own being 40, and taxi being 10%.
Got it. So that means that the availability of taxis in the airport location has gone down.
Right.
This is primarily because the airport, as you mentioned, is situated in the outskirts, so the taxi availability can be kind of had a dent there. So the taxi is not getting passengers while returning. Could be a reason
Right.
for that as well, and hence the taxis on this area have gone down. So now the taxis, since the taxis are less in number, it must also become difficult for the passengers to take the taxis, and which is why even though the time is same, the effort cost has increased. Is that a valid assumption to me?
Yes, Anirudh, you're absolutely correct here. Anirudh, can you just summarize the case for us and give your final recommendation?
Sure, definitely. And just take 30 seconds to kind
Surely.
of jot down and start.
Take your time. Take your time.
All right. So as per my understanding, the company has burned cash because of huge investments in building airports. Now, since you mentioned that the airports being located in the outskirts has very less availability of taxis, which are the most preferred mode of transportation to an airport. Hence, the passengers that were going to the airport to preferring these airlines basically must have gone down, which has actually led to the decrease in the occupancy rate. I would now like to state my recommendations.
Surely. Please go ahead.
All right. So I would suggest that the client should start its own shuttle service or collaborate with taxis and provide them with additional incentives. Since we already discussed that once a passenger goes to the airport, the taxis might not have a large number of kind of customers to go to take back to the main city. Further,
Right.
what the client can also do is include transportation costs from airport to the desired location as a part of the ticket price. So that from that, even if you are burning cash, we can recover some part of it or all part of it from kind of the ticket price as well.
Sounds good. Anirudh, I think the recommendations were great and you summed up the case very well. Well, you were able to ace this part of the consulting technical part of the interview, but we have one more thing for you, which is a guesstimate. And the guesstimate that we have is pretty interesting. So, what we need to do is that we need to estimate the number of dairy cows in the state of Maharashtra.
All right, sure. I'll just take 30 seconds to jot down any assumptions and kind of structure my approach, and then I'll get back to
Sure,
you.
sure.
All right. So before moving on and structuring and kind of laying down my approach, I would just like to clarify a few things so that we're on the
Sure.
same page. Firstly, I have assumed that the total milk demand is met by the domestic production and no milk is kind of being exported or imported to kind
Right.
of all that. And then I've estimated that the dairy cows by finding the volume of milk consumed per day. Is that again a fair assumption to me?
Right.
All right. Um, sure. I guess that would be it for now. I'll kind of clarify a few things as and when we kind of do dig deeper into the case. I'll just lay down a structure here.
Sure, sure.
All right, so I do have an approach in mind. So I'd start off with the population of Maharashtra, which I'll break it down into urban and rural because definitely the milk consumption would be a lot more different in these two areas.
Sure.
Then once we have the areas broken down as urban and rural, what I'd like to go ahead is find out the total number of households there on the basis of income level as well as the number of family members in each households, divided on three tiers: upper class, middle class, as well as lower class. Now, when we have the
Okay.
number of households, I'd like to calculate the average milk consumption per household per day. Once we do have the numbers, I kind of just multiply them, and then we'll be having the total household consumption.
Okay.
I'd further like to make an assumption here that the total commercial consumption would be around 10% of the total household consumption, if that is a fair assumption to me.
Fair. Yeah, sure.
Right. So that is how we can get the total milk production. And once we have the total milk production, I can estimate the number of liters that a cow would kind of produce in a day. And that is how I can arrive at the figure of total number of cows in Maharashtra.
Sure, that sounds good. Will it be possible for you to input some numbers here to
Sure.
arrive at a final figure?
Definitely. Just allow me 30 seconds.
Sure.
Sure. Can I go ahead?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So I've assumed that the total population of Maharashtra started off by 120 million, which I'll divide off in the ratio of 4 is to 6. That means 40% for urban and 60% for rural, which brings us 12 million households for urban areas and 14 million households for the rural areas. As I mentioned, I'll further break it down into upper class, middle class, and lower class. I have different kind of segmentations for the rural areas as well as the upper areas. Starting
Sure.
off from the urban segment, the 12 million households can be divided in the ratios of 20%, 60%, and 20%. 20% for upper class, which gives us around 2.4 million households.
Correct.
60% for middle class, which gives us 7.2 million households. And 20 million for lower class, which gives us 2.4 million households again.
Sounds good.
In the rural segment, which is 60% of the total population, upper class can be 5% because again it's a rural area. Middle class can go up at around 60% again, which is 8.4 million households, and the lower class can go up to 35%, which is 4.9 million households, if that is
Sounds good.
all. Sure. So the average milk consumption that I have assumed for all of these different kinds of households, I'll start off with urban areas first. At urban areas in upper class, 1.5 liters per day. In middle class, it's 2 liters per day, and in lower class, it's 0.5 liters per day. Depends on the kind of needs they have and the poverty level and the affordability, basically. In
Right.
the rural areas, again, based on the same factor, it could be 1.5 liters for the upper class, 2
Hmm.
liters for the middle class, as well as 0.5 liters for the lower class. Why have I assumed 2 liters for the middle class and 1.5 for upper? Because at middle class, you can also assume that they would be owning cows as well, which is why the consumption can go up, as well as they would be doing some work that might involve a good amount of labor, basically.
Sure.
So, talking about the milk consumption, I have just multiplied the average milk consumption per household to the number of households that we have, which
Hmm.
gives us just to save some time, the total household consumption of urban as well as rural summed
Right.
up comes out to be around 39.5 million liters. And as I already mentioned that I would be taking 10% for the commercial as for the commercial consumption, it would be around 3.95 million liters. And hence the total milk production comes up to be around 45 million liters, both for domestic as well as commercial consumption in a day in Maharashtra. Now, since this is the total milk production, and we have to find out the total cow milk production, what I basically assumed here is that the ratio of, again, milk is something that can be produced both by cows as well as buffaloes. So I've basically assumed that the ratio of milk production by buffaloes to cows is 1/2. So basically,
Hmm.
for every 3 liters of milk that is being produced, 2 liters is being produced by cows and 1 liter is being produced by buffaloes.
Sure.
So the total cow production here would be 2 by third of the 45 million liters that we have just calculated, which is around 30
Sure.
million liters. Now, as already mentioned, to find out the total number of dairy cows in Maharashtra, I have assumed that every cow can produce 5 liters of milk in a day. I'm not really
Hmm.
there because I'm not kind of, I don't belong to that background, so I hope it's 5 million, 5 liters is fine.
It's a fair assumption, yes.
All right. And so the total number of dairy cows in Maharashtra comes up to be 30 by 5 million, which is around 6 million.
Right. I think, Anirudh, that is a correct answer. Your estimate is correct. And I think you were brilliant with the assumptions that you've made so far. There could be some changes here and there, but I think at the end you were able to give a clear structure to it. So, on that note, Anirudh, I think it was great interacting with you. Um, what we have for you is that if you have any questions for us, you have the time to ask it. If not, we would be more than happy to conclude the interview.
Thanks a lot for the feedback. Firstly, it was lovely interacting with you as well. I just have one question. So, basically, since you have also been into consulting for so long, did you ever think of owning your own startup, or why did you continue ahead with consulting, basically?
Right. So for me, I think once I started with consulting, it was, as you said, you want to always explore more because
Right.
there's so many industries and functions that you have to explore while going forward. And I think for me to go ahead with a startup culture, I always wanted the thirst to get more from consulting never ended for me. So that, and I think the people that you work with that you mentioned in the beginning, I
Exactly.
think that's very important.
Yeah.
So the people that I work with here as a team is like something which gives me a lot of satisfaction, and the work again is very entrepreneurial in nature.
That's
So I think never found the need of something missing in to go and start a startup. I think all of it is a mixture of what I'm getting in my job right now.
exactly. And I could completely relate. I guess consulting has it all. And the best thing about consulting is the fact that it opens up opportunities to a lot many industries. And while
Surely.
working in a startup, you would kind of be restricted to one particular thing or one particular domain.
Yeah, the end goal is not the
Yes,
same. Yes,
exactly.
definitely.
All right, that was all from mine. Thanks a lot for your time and consideration, and looking forward to meeting you on the
Thank
other
you so
side of
much,
this.
Anirudh. Yes, surely. We'll get back to you with the results very soon. Till then, all the very best.
Thanks.